Fellas, lady fellas, everyone in our society, welcome to the Fantasy and Reality Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Tacker. Today in the Ridiculous Overdecorated Studio, we're going to be going over Week 5 starts and sits for the quarterback and running back positions. So, I know lately there's been a lot of inconsistency between guys like the receivers of last week doing ridiculously bad. So, hopefully we'll see that trend end. We'll see some guys that are supposed to do well. We might see some surprisingly good performances. Hopefully not any surprisingly bad performances, unless it's guys that you're going against. So let's count on that to be a good thing. But let's get right into it. The first game we have up is the New England Patriots and the Washington Redskins. You start Tom Brady. They're going against yet another bad team. Big surprise. So you got to start him, see what he does. And I mean, that defense is going to carry them, so it basically doesn't matter what the Patriots do because the defense is going to kill the terrible team that they're going against in that week. So, Brady's a start. I would start James White with caution because they might have a huge lead in this game. So, I would see them leaning a bit more on the run. I would have to bench Sony Michel, though, because he's been so inconsistent and just not much of a factor, especially as much as you would want him to be in fantasy football. So he would be a bench for me, but I can see the argument for him being a start. So as always, this is always up to you. So he would be a bench for me, but I could see the argument for a starting position. As far as the Redskins go, you got to bench Dwayne Haskins. He's the future of the franchise, all freaking out and everything, but he threw 2 interceptions in his first play, and then one being a pick 6. So it's like, I mean, how promising does the Washington Redskins future look? It's a bit too early to tell, but as for this game, especially against that defense of the Patriots, I would definitely bench Dwayne Haskins. I would also bench Adrian Peterson and Chris Thompson because, again, for that defense, so just get rid of any of your Redskins that are in your starting lineup, put them in the bench spot, and just hold out for this week. For the next game, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Carolina Panthers. I mean, Gardner Minshew is a start. I think he's going to do well. He's been doing so well for the start of his career so far. So, I mean, you got to kind of ride the hot hand. So, keep it going. As far as Leonard Fournette goes, I mean, he's going to see the volume. He had like 225 rushing yards last week, so I see that huge amount of production continuing. I mean, not to that extent, but still to a high degree. So he's a start for me. As far as Carolina goes, I'll bench the quarterback. Kyle Allen is kind of falling off, so we'll have to see how that goes. Jacksonville's defense is surprisingly good and bad at times, so we'll just err on the side of caution and bench Kyle Allen. If Cam comes back, we'll still bench him. And I mean, my boy Christian McCaffrey is obviously, he's a must start. Dude's going to have 800,000 yards by the end of the season. He's carrying that team, which I mean, if you aren't seeing that by now, it's kind of ridiculous. But I mean, dude's a dog. Enough said. Christian McCaffrey, automatic start. For the next game, we have the Arizona Cardinals and the Cincinnati Bengals. Kyler Murray, he would be a start for me because the Bengals are not that great of a defense. The same goes with Andy Dalton. He's obviously a start since he's actually been doing really well. He's had that one blunder on Monday night because he's not good in prime time. But other than that, he's been doing well, having to throw the ball a lot. He's in the top 8 or so in passing yards for this season at quarterback position. So I think we're going to keep riding that. As far as the running backs go, even though neither one of their offensive lines are that good, the defenses they're going against are not too good at all. So start David Johnson, start Joe Mixon. I mean, this should be really productive games for these guys if the line can actually do well for each of those guys. So there'll be starts for now, but if they keep getting injuries and bad things on the offensive lines, it's going to be rough for them for the rest of the season. For the next game, we have the Atlanta Falcons and the Houston Texans. Both Deshaun Watson and Matt Ryan have been having very off seasons. Their lines are terrible. They're getting sacked so much. It's ridiculous. But, I mean, what can you do until you upgrade the offensive line? As of now, they'll both be starts for me, but if you want to err on the side of caution, because Deshaun Watson's he's gonna get sacked like 17 times this game. So I mean, it's like if you're in a league that has negative points for sacks for quarterbacks, it's gonna be a rough season for you if you have Deshaun Watson as your starter the entire time. The same with Matty Ice. He's gonna throw picks. It's what he does. I mean, he's also gonna throw touchdown passes, but it's not a pretty start. But I mean, you almost have to because of the weapons he has. It's basically inevitable that he'll produce just because he has Julio, Mohamed Sanu, Calvin Ridley, Austin Hooper, Devonta Freeman. I mean, Matty Ice has all the weapons. He just has to stop throwing to the other team, which should be obvious, but I mean, when you fold up like a lawn chair like Matty Ice does, it's not always a guarantee that he'll throw to his own team. As far as the running backs go, I'll start Devonta Freeman. He's been doing well. He's on the up and up. So hopefully he can continue that stride and that trend upward. So I'll start him. I'll bench Ito Smith. I don't think he's going to be that much of a factor. I'll also bench Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson Jr. because they haven't really done all that much. They kind of take production away from each other. And the Atlanta defense is kind of stout against the run. So not the greatest, but I think they'll do enough to stop those guys. So I think they would be a bench for me. The next game we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the New Orleans Saints. Jameis Winston might be a tough matchup for him based on how the New Orleans defense has been doing the past couple weeks, especially against Dak Prescott. They stopped him and they stopped Zeke. Zeke had like 30-something yards altogether. So he was kind of starving that game. So the defenses are doing well. But Jameis Winston would be a start because he's doing so hot. And I think he might actually do well. He'll find one of the guys because they have so many weapons at the receiver position. So I think Jameis will do a decent job. But, I mean, if you don't want to start him, I completely understand. As far as the running backs go, bench Barber, bench Rojo. As I said before, the New Orleans defense just killed Zeke. So I don't see those two guys doing any better. So they'll be benches for me. For the New Orleans side, I'll bench Teddy Bridgewater. It is so difficult having to watch him run around, do crazy things, and the Saints still win despite him trying his hardest to make the Saints lose. So he's obviously a bench for me. As far as Kamara goes, he's going to be a start, but the Tampa Bay defense is really good at the run, so you're going to kind of want to temper your expectations. I mean, it's not great matchup for him, but I mean, it's Alvin Kamara. You picked him in the first round, and I mean, he's a must start for your team. If you bench him, then you have an awesome core at the running back position on your team. So if you can afford to bench him, you might want to, but I mean, on the off chance that you do, I mean, he's a must start. And as far as Latavius, he's a non-factor, so don't even worry about him. Next, we have the Minnesota Vikings and the New York Giants. Kirk Cousins will definitely be a bench for me because he and Thielen are just doing weird things, having a not-so-great relationship. Diggs is also kind of possibly wanting out. So, I mean, it's not looking good for them, so he'll be a bench. But, I mean, if you need to, he could do well for you against the Giants. As far as Dalvin Cook, obviously, must start. No problem. Done with that. Giants, Daniel Jones would be a bench for me because the Minnesota Vikings defense has done well, so I don't think that's a good matchup for Jones. As far as Wayne Gallman goes, he'll be a start for me. Last week we benched him, but luckily on the teams I had him on, the other running backs did really well. I had like Chubb, Cook, Kamara, guys like that on teams that really performed well, that helped me out, that I didn't have to worry about the Wayne Gallman benching. But for this week, he'll be a start with caution because, like I said, the Minnesota defense is pretty difficult to run against. So hopefully Wayne Gallman can get something going, but we'll see how that goes. Next game, we have the Chicago Bears and the Oakland Raiders. Chase Daniel is getting his first start of the year because Trubisky's out. I like Chase Daniel, but this game he'll be a bench for me. I'm not sure how well he'll do. For the running backs, I mean, if you have to, you can start David Montgomery. It's not looking right for him. I mean, he's kind of on the downward trend, not being too efficient. So the run game there is kind of not looking too good. I would bench Tariq Cohen. I mean, like I said, the running back game is not looking that great in Chicago, so I just don't have high hopes for them. As far as the Raiders, bench everyone. Derek Carr against that Chicago defense. Josh Jacobs against that Chicago defense. I mean, it's not looking pretty for them, so just don't even try to play them. I don't think they'll do well. Next, we have the New York Jets and the Philadelphia Eagles. Whoever the starting quarterback will be for the Jets, I mean, who's going to come back, who's playing, this and that stuff. But whoever it is, I'll bench them. I mean, I don't see them doing that well. The Eagles defense has been doing much better, so it's not really a good look to start a Jets quarterback. Also, Le'Veon Bell, they're coming off of the bye week, but you might have to be without Le'Veon for another week because I would probably bench him. The Eagles' rush defense is pretty good, so I think they're going to stop Le'Veon. He won't see as much production, but I mean, if you have to start him, I don't blame you, man. Next, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. Start Carson Wentz. The Jets' defense is okay. They're not that great, but I mean, I think Carson Wentz will still do well. As far as Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders go, I would probably start both of these guys with caution and the flex spot because they both do well at the same time, which is good because if you have one or the other, I mean, you know, they could just snipe touchdowns from each other, but I mean, it's good because, not good because they steal touchdowns from each other, but it's good that they can operate on the same offense, both being productive in the same game, so you don't have to worry about which guy is going to be having a good game. They can hopefully each have their own separate, all-around good game at the same time. For the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers, we have next Lamar Jackson. He's a start. Pittsburgh is looking terrible. So, I mean, you have to start Lamar Jackson. As far as Mark Ingram goes, he's also a start. I think he's like the 6th running back in fantasy right now, so he's doing well. Keep it up. Start him. For Pittsburgh, you got to bench Mason Rudolph. Baltimore's defense is not that great this season, so I would have to maybe start Judd Connor and Samuels as a potential flex spot because, as I said, Baltimore's defense is better against the pass, so bench Mason Rudolph. Not great against the run, so start Connor and possibly even Samuels. Next, we have the Buffalo Bills and the Tennessee Titans. Kind of a weird game, but, I mean, it should hopefully be entertaining. I would have to probably bench Josh Allen and Marcus Mariota, even though Mariota's actually, weirdly enough, doing well, but that Buffalo defense is looking scary. They kind of stymied and hindered Tom Brady last week, so, I mean, I don't see Marcus Mariota doing any better than Tom Brady would, but you never know. This is football. Unpredictability factor is way high up, so anything can happen. I would also bench Josh Allen. I mean, he's throwing so many interceptions, being a bit inconsistent, so I just don't want that right now. As far as the running backs go, I will start Frank Gore only if Devin Singletary doesn't play. If Singletary plays, they're going to eat into each other's production, so I don't want any of that. So if Singletary sits, start Frank Gore. Derrick Henry, he's going to see a lot of volume, so you should definitely start him. Don't worry about Deion Lewis all that much. He's not becoming too high of a factor, but in deeper leagues, you could probably take a look at him. Next, we have the Denver Broncos and the LA Chargers. Start Phillip Rivers. He's doing well. The offense as a whole is doing decently well, even though they're not winning every single game. But he's going to do well. Melvin Gordon's coming back. I mean, you got to start him. You've been holding him for this long because I'm sure you probably drafted him. So finally, you get to put him in that starting lineup. Let's see what he does. But I would also start Austin Eckler maybe in a flex spot because I also think he's going to produce I don't think it's going to be 100% of Melvin Gordon right at the get-go, because I'm not sure how good of shape Melvin Gordon's in. I'm sure he's been doing some stuff, but I haven't really heard anything on about if he's going somewhere to train, kind of like Zeke did, keeping in shape. So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen. I think no matter what, Melvin Gordon's going to be hurt in like 5 or 6 weeks anyway. Eckler's going to be back. So, if you could possibly hold on to Eckler. For the Broncos, I'll sit Flacco. I mean, he could do well because, the Broncos offense as a whole has been doing a tad bit better. But, it's Joe Flacco, so I don't really trust him all that much. For the running backs, if I had to choose one, I would probably choose Phillip Lindsay. In a flex spot or so, he should see more of the opportunities. Russ Freeman I would bench because he's just not seeing what you need to be a productive guy on your team, so you can bench him. Next, we have the Green Bay Packers and the Dallas Cowboys. You got to start Aaron Rodgers. Even though it's against the decent Dallas defense, you could argue that they're going to do well against Rodgers, but it's Aaron Rodgers, so you kind of have to start him. As far as Aaron Jones will go, he's start at the flex position with caution. He hasn't done fantastic like you would like him to, but if you are desperate for it and you have an open flex spot, Aaron Jones can be a guy that benefit from it. As far as Dallas goes, I'll start Dak Prescott and Zeke. You kind of can't bench these guys at this point. They went against a tough defense last week, but I don't see Green Bay's defense stopping them nearly as bad as New Orleans did last week. So Zeke, I think he'll go back to eating his normal amount of food. And then as far as Dak goes, I think he'll get back into his rhythm. I could see if you don't want to start him. I completely understand the argument for that. But most times you got Dak as your only quarterback. So, he's a must start for you if he's the only guy that you have. Next, we have Sunday Night Football, the Indianapolis Colts and the Kansas City Chiefs. You start Pat Mahomes, we're done talking about that. And then as far as the running backs go, you start Shady, and then whichever Williams plays. If Damian Williams is active as well as Darrell Williams, don't worry about Darrell. Damian and Shady will be the guys. But if Damian Williams is out, Darrell and Shady will be the guys. So you can start either one, Shady and whichever Williams is up at the time in the flex spot, because they're going to do well. Let's see how well they do. As far as the Colts, Jacoby Brissett is a start. Matt Stafford gave the Chiefs all they could handle last week, so I see Jacoby Brissett having a nice game, doing what he does, actually being more productive, and giving the Chiefs a run for their money. Marlon Mack, if he's not injured, you can start him, but if he is, you obviously can't start that guy. So pay attention to the news, things like that. Keep your ear to the ground. See what kind of news is going to come up about Marlon Mack and his injury, so keep a close eye on that. Next, for the Monday night game, the final game of Week 5, we have the Cleveland Browns and the San Francisco 49ers, undefeated, by the way. So Baker is a tough guy to have on your team. Kind of like Matty Ice, just not as productive. It's tough to have Baker. You're not sure what to do with him. But this week, he will be a start with caution for me. If you don't want to start him, completely understand. But hopefully this will be the game. They had a really nice game against Baltimore last week. So if this continues, if hopefully Jarvis plays and does well, can do what he did last week, get OBJ more involved. That way they have an all-around better game. Chubb killed it. He's a start. So, it's looking nice for the Browns, but we'll just have to see how Baker does. As far as the 49ers go, Jimmy Garoppolo would be a start with caution for me. The Browns defense isn't the greatest, so hopefully we'll see Jimmy Garoppolo do something. They're undefeated. They want to keep that streak going. They want to try to defend their undefeated streak. So I think they're going to do well. It just depends on how well Jimmy G's doing off of that bye week. They have plenty of time to prepare for this game, so I think he'll be comfortable and worth a start. As far as the running backs go, they are kind of wishy-washy. If Tevin Coleman comes back, it's going to be Tevin Coleman, Matt Breida, Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson Jr. You know, like there's so many backs that it makes me uncomfortable on who I should pick, which guy's going to do well. So I would probably just bench all the guys just based on the unpredictable and unsureness of who's going to see the production, who's going to do well. So those guys would be benches for me. But those were my start sits for the quarterback and running back positions for week 5. Let me know if you have any questions about if I should start this guy, sit this guy over who. Let me know down in the comment section below. I'll try to answer as well as I can. But as always, thank you for tuning in and thank you for your support. Leave all questions, comments, top suggestions, feedback down there in the comment section below. We'll answer any and all questions that you have. Remember that sports is supposed to be enjoyed, so please tell someone about us, watch it together, critique, whatever. We want to grow as exponentially as possible. We want to grow the FNL Society. And in order to do that, you got to smash that thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, so keep trying to give you as much content as possible. But we'll leave you with God bless America and God bless fantasy football. Take care.